Let's talk about where we're at with the $2,000 stimulus checks. The Senate was in session yesterday, and there was all sorts of debate and comments on these checks, potentially a little bit of progress. So I'm going to go over all that was said, kind of an analysis of where we're at right now, and then end off with what we can expect with everything we know right now. And also, I hope you had a wonderful New Year's Day. I had a pretty good laid back New Year's. I just got my first workout in of the New Year's as well, so I'm feeling kind of good. Anyways, let's jump right in. Like I said, the Senate was in session yesterday, and a large part of the conversation was a push for these larger $2,000 checks. It seems like more and more people are kind of going to the side of let's bump up this check size. However, there are, of course, a lot of dissenters, including the main one, Mitch McConnell. So things were getting pretty darn heated in the sessions, kind of some arguments back and forth. People were talking out of turn. If you've watched any of these Senate sessions, it's very official and you have to like request permission to speak, things like that. So it's kind of rare to see like people talking over each other. And there was definitely some of that yesterday. And it makes you feel good as a viewer that you know there are a few people who care that much where they're like, no, this is not right. This is how it should be. And I just appreciated seeing that when I was sitting down watching this and kind of trying to take everything in. That way I can break it down and then present it to you. Oh, and also, before I forget, make sure you grab your free stocks with Webull with the link in my description. The 4 free stocks deal is unfortunately over with, but you could still get 2 free stocks. So check that out in the description below. So here's what the senators were saying during this session yesterday. Senator Thune, he's one of the people who was actually against the stimulus checks, and he was very outspoken yesterday about this. His biggest complaints are the money would possibly be better spent elsewhere. So he brought up some examples. I'm going to present both sides here. He brought up some examples. He said that we could do another round of paycheck protection funding just with the money that we would spend on these stimulus checks, and we would still have several $100 billion left over. So he's saying instead of doing this increased round of checks, we could do another round of paycheck protection, still have $200 or $300 billion left, just as an idea, I guess, as to something else that this could be spent on. But we already have a second round of paycheck protection. So how good of an argument is that? I don't know. He did have one good point, though. He said that instead of doing these increased stimulus checks, we could, for the same amount of money, extend enhanced unemployment by 40 weeks. Currently, under the latest stimulus bill, we're looking at an 11-week extension. He's saying we could extend this an additional 40 with that same $500 or $600 billion that we would need to do the increased stimulus check size. Now, that, in my opinion, actually isn't a bad argument because of course, it's more targeted to people who lost their jobs or can't find jobs. And that's one of the biggest complaints with this increased stimulus check size is it's not targeted enough. But like I've said many times before, how do you know who's in need, who's not in need? Even if you judge it by income, it's like an impossible question to really have an answer to. So unemployment isn't a bad way to send out stimulus money. SNAP benefits, that's also a great way to send out stimulus money, stimulate the economy, because of course, people who are on SNAP benefits need money for food, and they're going to spend that on food. Stimulus checks are probably number 3 on the list as far as best to target stimulus-wise. So those are kind of the big 3 that economists really cite are like the best things for the general population and getting things going. So extend unemployment, that's not a bad idea. Let's see it on a bill. Let's see it argued and debated in Congress. How about that? So he really just went on and on talking about how there's just better ways to spend it. Like I said, let's get this on a proposal. He also said his issue with these $2,000 checks is it would mean money to families who earn up to $350,000 per year, a stimulus payment. And this is also something that McConnell was saying over and over again. The kind of tagline here with the increased checks are, this is socialism for the rich. I don't really appreciate that line for stimulus checks, but they're arguing that these high income earning families are going to get stimulus checks. But the argument just doesn't make sense. So as Thune was arguing this and McConnell was arguing this, they were saying these families with high incomes are going to get these big checks. And I was like, how does this work? Is like the stimulus somehow fundamentally different under the Cash Act, the one that increases the check size? And then later on in the debate, thankfully this got addressed. And no, it's not any different how these payments are administered. Bernie Sanders said, you guys voted for a stimulus payment last week that's administered the exact same way as the Cash Act administers these funds. So why is it socialism for the rich this week and totally a suitable stimulus last week? It just doesn't really make sense. And then on top of this, I did some more digging myself afterwards to see like how much money are these people really receiving who might earn $350,000 a year. And if you don't know, the stimulus payment decreases in size the more you earn. So starting at $75,000 a year, it decreases by $5 for every $100 you earn. So actually with the most recent $600 payment, it phases out completely at around $87,000 a year adjusted gross income. So the argument is that phase out is going to be longer because the stimulus check size is larger. So the real phase out, if you do the math here, is at $115,000 for a single filer or $230,000 for a joint filer, which sounds like a lot of money. That's probably not someone who needs a stimulus payment, or at least doesn't need it as much as a lower income earner on average anyways. But we have to remember that person who's earning $115,000 a year as a single filer, they're not getting the whole stimulus payment. They're getting the tiniest stimulus payment. Like, I mean, just for an example, let's say someone had an adjusted gross income of $114,900. So just outside of that range. It wouldn't mean that they'd get a $2,000 check. They would get $5 because it's $5 for every 100. So the difference here, it's like, okay, yeah, they might receive some stimulus, but the amount is so small compared to the amount of relief that would go to the rest of the general public who is more in need. So the argument just seems weird, like they're making an argument almost basing it off of hoping that other people weren't going to check the facts. So that was kind of strange to me. So McConnell and Thune, that's basically what they were saying. Those are the people who were largely the most outspoken against these checks. And then we have Bernie Sanders, who really took the floor in the Senate yesterday and did a ton of the talking. And he was saying that the stimulus checks are not socialism for the rich and, gave some arguments against it. And he also cited how, okay, if that is socialism for the rich, what do you have to say about this? And he brought up how huge companies like Amazon, Delta Airlines, and Chevron all paid no taxes in 2018, but received rebates of hundreds of millions of dollars. And he really kind of made a spectacle out of it because he had some giant checks sitting on a little tripod as he was talking about it. He's a great speaker. You got to give him that much at least. So he's like, okay, if that's socialism for the rich, what do you call this? Hundreds of millions of dollars to Jeff Bezos and other people like that who are, literally the richest people. And also Bernie Sanders, during the Senate session, says, we just want a vote. Let's just vote on these checks and we'll just see how it fares. Let's see if people want it or not. And the vote on the Cash Act, just for the singular $2,000 checks, was shot down and it wasn't voted on. And then he later in the session said, okay, you guys don't want to vote on that? Let's vote on McConnell's bill that has the $2,000 checks, the section 230 that deals with the social media companies and the election fraud. Let's vote on all three of these issues and try and at least get something done before the Senate session is done for this year. And again, that was shot down again. And it seemed like a perfectly reasonable request. Like, okay, this is your proposal. Let's vote on your proposal. I like to stick to the middle, but in this situation, it just seems like there's some real glaring discrepancies that just don't make sense. Arguments that don't make sense. Just overall fallacies. Like you made this bill, but you don't want to vote on this bill. It just makes you scratch your head like, something else is going on here. And then Josh Hawley also spoke out wanting these checks as well. And he just basically was talking about how he doesn't understand how we can't get this deal done, especially after, both of those proposals didn't even get voted on. And he was saying how the president wants this, the House wants this, many Senate members want this, pretty much every Democrat wants this, and even some Republicans want this, including him. He's a Republican. So why not at least just vote on this thing? And he also says this doesn't feel like a Democrat versus Republican issue. This was a great line. He said it feels like a Senate versus the United States issue, which really is a good way of summing up how it feels. It does feel like it's just a few people versus the entire United States. And I mean, I'm not envious of being in their shoes right now. There's the amount of people who dislike those few people who are against the checks. That's crazy. It's crazy to me too, to go that against the people. They're supposed to represent the people, and they're, going against the people's interests. So he was saying that he basically finished off by saying, I mean, what a lot of us have been saying, how is it that we can afford to give money to all of these outside interests, all of these foreign countries? He was talking about how we've given billions of dollars for purchasing pork, but yet we can't give more money in stimulus to the American people who need it most. And, that's hard to argue against. And really that was about it for the Senate session. We kind of, we got a little bit more solidified on, why people are for it, why we're against it, but the overall needle didn't move a whole lot. So the question still stands, what are the odds of this thing actually happening? And as of right now, it seems like in the current Congress, in the current Senate, it's not great because we have this blockade of Mitch McConnell, who just doesn't want to get this vote on the floor. And he simply just stands in the way of getting this thing done. If it were voted on, it still might not pass, but it probably would at least be close. It may pass, depending on if some Republicans sway or not. There's some that haven't really exactly said, yes, I'm for it, yes, I'm against it. I have another video that actually breaks down everyone in the Senate and whether they're for or against the checks as of right now, at least the people who are outspoken against it. What we might end up seeing is, after these runoff elections in Georgia happen, if the Senate turns Democratic or even breaks even, we might see a situation where the odds of something like this passing increases because, of course, there's more people who want this to happen. And right now the vote is so close. So we could still see this happen. I don't want to take away all hope, but as of right now, it remains pretty uncertain. At least the good news is many people have already received their $600 payment. So I'm really hoping that everyone receives that before that January 15th deadline. We don't have to worry about that anymore. And that's really it for now. I'll keep you updated on everything that I can find regarding these checks. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Makes a huge difference for the YouTube algorithm, helps push this content out to more people, and also share this video if you thought it was informative, you think there's someone who might benefit from it. So that's going to do it for today. I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.